What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck back with you. Buck, first of all, as we get started here, I see the sweatshirt. I know you got your squad, your high school squad represented. What are we doing right now? What's going on in the off season?
So we have official practice in my section starts July 29th. Mm-hmm. So we got a couple more weeks of summer workouts, then you get a week off, and then we're back at it. So right when we're getting ready for back together weekend or back to football weekend, whatever it is we call it, we're kicking off. So simultaneous start to get it going. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool, man. How are we looking, by the way? How's our squad looking?
Got a lot of young guys that are trying to put it together, but it's fun because I think if you talk about like being a person who used to love to take Legos and put things together, this is an opportunity for me and the coaches to put together a new squad with new people, new young people, and just try and learn along the way. It was funny, the conversation that we had on the podcast previously about the book where we were talking about like brainstorming and brain writing and all that other stuff, but like it really was helpful because that's kind of where you are. You have to figure out like, hey, we can do things like we've always done them, or do we need to do something differently with what we have? And as easy as it appears to be like, oh, this is a new group, you always hear coaches say like, hey, we figure out what the personnel is and then we do what they do. But it's hard when you've had a level of success doing it one way that can even consider changing and being like, you know what? I think we do it differently because this group is a little different. So in thinking about that, and look, I'm no way like talking about being Saban, but to think about how Nick Saban pivoted, the way he went from playing defense one way with a certain style of player to doing it another way, I would say that is extreme courage as a coach to not just get in the pattern of, no, this is what we always do. We can continue to do it because we've been successful a certain way.
Yeah, instead of complaining about players not doing what you want them to do at a high level, it's the ability to adjust and say, okay, well, that's not what they do well, so I'm going to go ahead and not ask them to do things they're incapable of doing. Which to me, especially if you're not like if you're at one of these powerhouse, top 25 programs in the country, high school programs, like you can just run whatever you run because every year you're gonna have enough guys that can do what you want to do. But that's what I love so much about high school football is for the rest of us, for the way I grew up, the way you grew up, the way the team you coached, the way the school where my kids play, the team, the what it looks like, how they play changes morphs from year to year because you have a totally different skill set.
So I always thought that was the appeal for me for high school because people always ask, did you ever want to coach college football? I said, no, high school was always the thing because I just remember my high school coach always saying, you got to coach at what shows up. And, this is obviously before the transfer era and recruiting and all that other stuff. But like literally whatever was in your neighborhood, whatever showed up at the high school, you had to kind of figure out like, all right, this is what we got. So we got to figure out a way to win. And the coaches that were legendary were the ones who were consistently able to win with whatever showed up. They had a system in place. They had a way of developing kids and program where they were able to consistently win. And so to me, that has always been the appeal of high school, and that's the challenge of high school. And so if you love like the purity of high school ball, shoot, why wouldn't you want to take on challenges like that?
No doubt. On the show today, we are going to jump into some old reports. So I posted this on social media maybe a month or so ago about, hey, any old reports you guys are interested in, player discussions, what we thought of them coming out. And so we had some names that were dropped on there. So I looked them up, found some notes on those guys. So we'll jump into those. We're also, before we get to that, Buck, there's one little assignment that I wanted to have for you here, which I was looking at this and I was thinking, when you're looking at the start of the season, there's a ways look, this team worst to first, how you stack the divisions. Like there's a million different ways to preview it and talk about it. I thought one of the simple things to do would be if we looked at some of these league leaders and I just hit you up with everything that's happened with them, considering, their health, their growth, their development, as well as their support around them, what's been done. Better or worse? Like, do you think they have a better or worse season in 24 than they did in 23? So I want to rip through a few names on some of these league leaders and just tell me what you think based off what they did last year, knowing what's changed around them, if you think they are better or worse going into this next season. You ready?
Cool. Let's do it.
Let's start with the quarterbacks here. I'm looking at quarterback rating. Just pick the number here. So I'm going to, with the stat, I'm going to go with quarterback rating. So a guy I feel like we haven't talked a ton about, Brock Purdy. coming off last year. This next year, is there another level for Brock Purdy?
Yes, there's another level. I feel like this is the year where the game really slows down for Brock Purdy. What he's done has been remarkable considering his lack of NFL experience and how quickly he's been able to adapt to the pro game. Well, now that he is seen, I would say, like most of the tactics that people can do against him, now is the fun part because he begins to counter what the counters are to him. And as he gets more and more comfortable in the system, as Kyle Shanahan gives him more ownership of the system, I think we begin a chance to see if Purdy can go to that next level. I would already say, look, he's beyond good. I think he's really, really good. I think he has an opportunity to be great. And for us to talk about a former 7th round pick being a great quarterback in this league, to me is a testament of his work ethic, how the experience from Iowa State really helped him jumpstart his NFL career, and then being the perfect fit in a system that really can elevate quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that there's room to even grow off last year. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, we talked about his quarterback ratings, 113, 4,200 yards plus, almost 70% of the completion percentages at 69, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks, 9.6 average per attempt. So, I mean, all those numbers, you're getting explosives, you're getting touchdowns, you're getting efficiency. All those numbers are excellent. But I just think, to me, this is a build offense. You know, you talk about being able to have your base installed, and everything's pretty simple how they build off of that. But volume is I think he can handle volume mentally. And I know Shanahan's always going to be able to add wrinkles and add on top of what they already have in place. And I think when you look at, you know, with McCaffrey, there's so many different ways they can still continue to explore how to use him, which sounds crazy, but I still think there's more there. The Ayuk thing I'm curious about, but, you know, I still anticipate he's there once we get to the season. So I'm with you. I think Brock Purdy has a better year, which is pretty scary for the rest of the league.
Yeah, I think he has a better year. The other thing that I think you have to take into account, I anticipate Brandon Ayuk being there, and I anticipate Ricky Pearsall playing a big role. I think the lessons from the loss of the Super Bowl in terms of needing more guys that can win one-on-one on the outside forces the Niners to spend more time in training camp working on their drop back passing game. They've been great wearing people out on play action, using things off run action. But if they are able to kind of smooth out some of the rough parts of their drop back passing game, now you have a complete offense. And I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is Matthew Stafford, but think about what Matthew Stafford was able to do and add to the LA Rams offense, being a very polished drop back passer. It just gave Sean McVay more answers. Brock Purdy can give Kyle Shanahan more answers if he becomes even more efficient and effective as a traditional drop back passer.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. All right, this next one I think will be a fascinating discussion. When you look at the numbers last year, I don't know if people even recognize the numbers last year. Dak Prescott was at 69.5% on a completion percentage. Okay, he's over 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 picks. He had a 105.9 rating. So those are just the raw numbers, right? I know the postseason did not go the way that the Cowboys and their fans would have hoped, but that is a monster season that he's coming off of. Again, another 12-win season, 3 in a row there for the Dallas Cowboys. This year, taking into account what we've got, right, Buck? You've got CeeDee Lamb, who with the recent reports saying he might not show up for the start of training camp, which baffles me a little bit based off the financial repercussions there. It doesn't make any sense to me. But based off that, we got video of Dak in a walking boot the other day, which was quickly, hey, no, don't worry about it. No big deal. Just a little hiccup there. But a little tea leaves there don't leave me feeling great about him taking a step forward off of a monster year that he had last year.
So I believe the numbers, the bottom line numbers end up being better, but the efficiency comes down. So what I'm saying is I think he throws for more passing yards. And I think he does that with his interceptions going up and his completion percentage going down. And that is primarily due, I believe the Cowboys are going to have to win in shootouts. I don't know if they're good enough defensively now that Dan Quinn is going. I like Mike Zimmer. I just think there's going to be some friction between Mike Zimmer's coaching style and the way the players have been accustomed to playing in terms of the discipline and detail and maybe just some of the loosey-goosiness that might have taken place under Dan Quinn. Mike Zimmer's not going to go for that. And I think that's going to lead to some issues early in the season where the defense has to adapt to Zimmer, and that means that the Cowboys are in more shootouts. And more shootouts mean more passing attempts. More passing attempts likely means more yards, but also chasing points leads to more interceptions. So Dak Prescott has maybe a better year on paper, but a less efficient year when it comes to being able to play winning football because they're chasing so many points in these shootouts.
You talk about it from the defensive side of the ball and a time period there to adjust. I'm looking at the offensive side of the ball. I'm looking at Tyler Guyton coming in there as a rookie who is on the offensive line, who's very talented, but still very little experience. I think he's very raw. I think the version you're going to get of him in November is going to be a much different version than what you see there in September. I think there's going to be some growing pains there. So when you look at that, you look at, I don't know what's going to happen with the CD Lamb contract situation, but that could lend itself to a little bit of a slow start, because of that. We'll see where Dak is health-wise. What does that look like? To me, this feels like it could be a rocky month there for the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of adjustments need to be made by those involved there. And I think that does impact Dak. I think eventually at the end of the year, he gets where he wants to be. Maybe I'd say it's a push in terms of the numbers that he posted last year. But I don't know that this group hits the ground absolutely running there based off of some of those new pieces on the coaching side defensively, as well as integrating some new folks there along the offensive line.
Yeah, like it's hard. The thing that Dallas has won 12 games, at least 12 games in 3 straight seasons. And to think that they could possibly do it again, to me, I can't buy that just because it appears to be just too much like uncertainty. There's too many loose ends for me to say that, hey, Dallas is going to be the team that vies for the NFC East crown and those things. I think he will continue to be good. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he puts himself in line to be, super paid, whether it's Dallas or somewhere else. I just don't know if it's going to result in the bottom line that the Dallas Cowboys and their fans want.
All right, this the next one. Let's do one more here on the quarterback side. Lamar Jackson last year, MVP, 67% passer, over 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, 7 picks. Obviously, the rushing adds into that with what he does, with the rushing totals and rushing numbers. That's a big reason why he's the MVP. So when you look at those numbers, maybe individually, then maybe take it over to the team with the Baltimore Ravens. Better or worse next year?
Man, this is a tough one for me, right? Because the old me thinks that, man, I feel like the Baltimore Ravens did this 2 years too late in terms of bringing Derrick Henry over. If you told me that Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator and they were going to play the way that they used to play, where they were running the football, pounding people with power and quarterback reads and those things, I would say that this would result in a better performance from Lamar Jackson. I think he steps back a little bit. I love Derrick Henry coming over. My lack of confidence in Todd Monken being able to incorporate all of those pieces into an offense that is trying to be forward thinking. I don't know if they can go forward thinking with an old school running back besides a quarterback who's a dynamic dual threat. But I don't know if they're ready to transition to a traditional drop back passing game. So I'm going to say it's a little bumpy. And because of that, the numbers aren't what they were a season ago.
I'm gonna go opposite. I'm gonna say it takes a step forward, especially with the passing department. A couple things. We connect the defense with the offense. Defense, there's changes there. Starting right there at the top of the defensive coordinator. You lose Patrick Queen. Like there's some pieces that are Geno Stone. They've lost some folks there on that side of the ball. So when I look at them, I could see them taking a step back defensively. Maybe they have to chase some points, which they haven't had to do a ton of. That can lead to some more offensive production. I think Zay Flowers is going to be a star, Buck. I think he's as good a wide receiver as they've had there. They've had some success with veterans. They have not had success drafting and developing wideouts, but this is the exception. This is the best one that they've drafted. I think he's got a chance to be. I don't know. Like Steve Smith was a name that kind of got evoked in our colleague and our partner, and that's rarefied air. I don't know if I'm going to go all the way to that level, but I think this dude has got outstanding ability. And I think if you have Mark Andrews healthy and Isaiah Likely out there together, I think there's ways this offense can grow forward. It's funny because when I look at them, everybody is focused on Derrick Henry and how he fits, and he's the perfect Baltimore Raven. I'm looking at him going, they don't need to rely on Derrick Henry like the Tennessee Titans had to rely on Derrick Henry. They don't need that.
You know what? You bring up a good point. And I think maybe in thinking about this, let's just say that the Baltimore Ravens had a conversation with Derrick Henry upon his signing and said, hey, I don't want you to get frustrated early. Early in the year, the first 8-9 games, you're on a pitch count, load management. We need you to be dominant November,
Once
December.
the weather changes.
Once we get to Thanksgiving, we're going to unleash you. Once the weather changes, you're right. We're going to start playing playoff football, which then tends to skew more towards run, ground and pound. That's when we're going to unleash Derrick Henry. We're not going to use you early. You can be in there. You'll get your plays. But if you tell me that's the approach and that's how they're going to use them, yeah, that's the scary part of what the Baltimore Ravens could be, using Derrick Henry in 4-minute situations, goal line, short yardage, the playoff run down the stretch. That's when no one wants to deal with the big back in cold weather.
Who, would be interesting, interesting assignment, and we can look at this as we head towards the season. Who do you think would be the best 12 personnel team in the NFL? I could argue that it's the Ravens.
Oh, DJ, I'm with you on that. And like here's the thing, because there's going to be a renaissance of 12 personnel. It's not only Baltimore. The Buffalo Bills are going to use a lot of 12 personnel. You think about Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and what 12 personnel gives you the opportunity to do. It gives you a chance to balance up your running game. It gives you a chance to dictate to the defense what personnel package you can be in. You can be in base and nickel. That second tight end is really a jumbo wide receiver. Do you have the personnel to be able to stay in base and do that? If you're nickel, we now can cobble the formations where we're running the nickel off the field with a powerful running back. You're right. Baltimore has a very dynamic 12 personnel package. And after attempting to maybe spread it out, maybe too much, they now begin to tighten it up. And I think Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews on the field a ton creates a lot of problems for opponents.
Yep. No, that's going to be an interesting team to follow and to watch. All right. We did some offensive guys. I want to do some defensive guys here real quick. And then we'll take a break and we'll get over to these old school reports here. But better year this year or worse year. TJ Watt, Buck, last year, 19 sacks. That's a big number.
That is a big number. But DJ, he's done that like 2 of the last 3 years. He's always in that conversation, being able to do it. I'm going to say a better year, slightly better, like in terms of numbers, maybe gets to 20. But here's why. I think this team is better constructed to play complementary football than they have been in the past. The combination of the running game with the defense, and we said it, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been at their best when they've had magical quarterback play in the fourth quarter. You can say a lot of things about Russell Wilson. We can say, oh, he's been up and down the last 2 years. The one thing that is consistent about Russell Wilson, if the game is tight in the fourth quarter, there's not a better closer than Russell. Russell had 4 game-winning drives a season ago for a team in Denver that was bad. He has 39 game-winning drives in his career, 31 fourth-quarter comebacks. DJ, because of his ability to make plays and because of this offense's ability to kind of be maybe a little more dynamic and explosive with the run game, I think TJ Watt has more opportunities to finish the game. And because he's a finisher, yeah, he has a better year than he had the previous year.
Yeah, I mean, I have no questions about his ability and his ability to take over games, dominate games, close games, finish games. But 19, man, that is such a big number that he posted last year. And I think with their group, they got some good young players. And sometimes you can look at it and say, okay, well, that's going to single him up, but that's going to free him up. Also, some of those guys can grab some of those numbers and some of that production. It gets dispersed a little bit. But with Highsmith, I like Herbig. I think Herbig, flashed last year as a rookie. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think that allows them to roll some guys through and keep them fresh. I'm a big Keanu Benton fan. On the inside, I think he's another one. He's going to be a star, man. I'm telling you, I think that guy's going to be big time. So I'm going to say he plays as well, but I'm going to say the numbers don't get funneled to him quite as much. I think some of his teammates, and that's a good thing for the Steelers, I think some of those teammates share in some of those sack numbers. So maybe, look, if he has 15, 16 sacks, he's a Pro Bowl or all pro, there's nothing wrong with that. But 19, Buck, that's a big number.
It is a big number. And I'll say this, though. I'll say they were able to do it last year, and they can never get control of the game. If they're able to have better control of the game from an offensive standpoint, there are even more opportunities for him to get after it. Man, 19 is high. Like we talk about,
it's a big number.
That's a big number, but let's go for it. Let's go big. Go big or go home.
This one is an interesting one. I was just going through the list of the sack artists here. Micah Parsons, 14 sacks last year. Buck, can he get up above that number?
I don't know if the Cowboys are going to stop the run well enough to have the right to really rush the passer. I worry about that people run right at them and it prevents them. I'm gonna say he doesn't get to that number. He goes below that number. I don't expect the Cowboys to be as good as they've been in the past, and that limits his opportunities to be able to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, it's a tough one. He's so physically gifted, and I think it could be a little bit different looking with Zimmer's defense and how they utilize him and what they do. I'm curious to see what that looks like. I'm gonna go with absolutely no thesis for this, other than the fact that he's such a freak. And I remember, a couple years ago saying if they would just devote him and let him rush, I thought he'd get 20 sacks. I really think he's that talented. So I'm gonna say he's gonna talent his way. He's gonna talent his way to over 14 sacks this year. But I'm curious to see how they use him, what they do.
Yeah, he is gifted. I mean, he's a gifted pass rusher, and it's funny, man. Like it'd be funny in a couple years when we go back and people ask us to read the reports on Michael Parsons and just I'll say this: how the league was wrong on Michael Parsons in terms of, I know people talked about like there's some character stuff or whatever, but I think the league was wrong just about the overall evaluation on what he could be at the next level as a player. I don't know if we talked enough about his pass rush prowess when we evaluated him at Penn State. We talked about him being a dynamic athlete. I don't know if we accurately predicted that he would be this kind of dominant pass rusher as a second level defender.
Well, yeah, I mean he's just an absolute nightmare coming off the edge. So I was an advocate early on once he got into the league and seeing what he could do of like, hey, just let this guy rush. I know they want to use him off the ball and do some different things to them, but like he impacts the game more coming off the edge. So it's an interesting evaluation. All right, one more, then we're going to take a break here, and then we'll come back and get through some old reports. But let me give you one more player here coming off of a strong year. Max Crosby had 14.5 last year, Buck. I think we're going to be quick on this one. I think we're going to be on the same page. I have confidence in that.
Way more. Christian Wilkins being beside him, creating more one-on-one opportunities. They get after it. And there may be a lot of questions and concerns about the Vegas Raiders and their offense, but there are no questions to me in terms of their front line and what they could do and what they should do defensively. That combination of Christian Wilkins and Christian Wilson and Max Crosby at the line, particularly if they're aligned beside each other, good night. Good night trying to figure out how to do it. And let's not forget, maybe Tyree Wilson emerges in.
I hope so, man. I hope so for his sake, because last year they got nothing out of that one.
As the top 10 player that was drafted out of Texas Tech to be able to create some chaos. If they're able to get the supporting cast around him playing at a high level, Max Crosby going to absolutely feast on these matchups on the other side.
Yep, no doubt. Well, that's a good get-off point here for us. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Max Crosby is one of the players you guys mentioned. You wanted to hear what the report was on him coming out of college. So I pulled up some of his notes along with a few others, and we'll jump through those hoops right after this quick break. All right, Buck. So we put it out there, social media. What are some guys you're curious about what the thoughts were on them coming into the draft? And so we got some of those names. I'm going to rip through some of them here and then give you my notes on them coming out. I'm not pulling up their reports. I have reports on a lot of these guys, like full summary reports, but just going through my notes, which I had put in Excel when they were coming into the draft. And you can go back to your recollection on some of these guys as well. Max Crosby was the first one. Max Crosby coming out was 6'0", 255, almost 6'5", 255 pounds, ran a 4.66. These are my notes on him. He's a left defensive end, had a real swooping inside swim move, big time get off, excellent hands. He can hold the point of attack. He's a little bit clunky, like just kind of some of his movement stuff I thought just kind of looked a little bit clunky. But he was obviously a home run pick by our buddy Mike Mack. And one of the lessons to learn from him from that evaluation is I remember talking to a defensive line coach who had gone around and worked out a ton of D linemen that year. And when Max Crosby's name came up, I think this coach might have been he was with the Lions, or I believe so. But he had gone through, and Max Crosby knew who their edge rushers were. I think maybe Cliff Averill, or talking about some old school guys that he had watched growing up, but was a student of pass rush, knew the names of a bunch of guys, knew what the bread and butter moves were for a bunch of these NFL players. And you always talk about it, and we've shared this forever on wide receivers and pass rushers. It's almost like they're artists, and it's a craft. And you talk to guys, and the guys that are really good at it are passionate about it, and that's all they want to talk about. And that was one of the nuggets that came out of the Max Crosby evaluation.
Look, one thing that I appreciate about Max Crosby is one of the things that we're learning about pass rushers. Guys that are relentless in their approach find a way to consistently get quarterbacks down. Guys who are really passionate about studying the art of pass rushing have a knack for being able to figure it out, regardless of how they enter the league. When I look at Max Crosby, he's a combination of both things that you want. Man, you kind of want a blue collar pass rusher who has some blue chip traits, and he has that. And man, he is a hard hat lunch pail guy with talent. And DJ, with those kinds of traits and that kind of attitude, man, you can become a double-digit sack artist in this league, and he has done it. And what I love about Crosby is he's continued to maintain that chip that he entered the league with. As a fourth-round pick, he continues to kind of see himself a little bit as that underdog, and he has to work and earn it every day. Those guys are dangerous. And look, I don't know if in looking at him at Eastern Michigan, which shout out to him for giving back a bunch of money. I think it's kind of cool. They named a field after him and all that. Nice. He and his wife were distinguished alums and athletes there. But like coming from his background, being able to be as successful as he's been with the Raiders, I just think as a self-made player, that's exactly what you hope for when you take someone in the fourth round as a developmental prospect.
No doubt. He's been a home run there for the Raiders. Next one, we don't have to spend much time on this one because we've talked about him so much over the years. George Kittle, people always wonder, why did he drop? Why wasn't he a higher pick? He was 6'0", 3'6", 247, ran 4.52, very limited production. That was the biggest knock on him in that Iowa offense. He was not totally healthy, just didn't have a ton of production. As an inline player, a lot of pivot routes. I did think he had a second gear when the ball was in the air. I thought he looked like a fullback, kind of how he played, physical, rugged, lots of wheel routes, excellent blocker, very physical. Production, that was it. I mean, that was the reason why he was available where the Niners were able to scoop him up.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We don't have to talk about it, but yeah, the production is spectacular. And when you see that and you have those kinds of players, man, you just tend to fall in love with them. And look, man, we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it. Like, it's just as good as it gets.
We always say, what are the lessons when we're going through these guys who were picked later, and then guys who have outperformed their draft slot? What's the lesson? So if we're going to stick with that theme, the lesson on Max Crosby was, okay, you talked about some of those blue chip traits to go with a blue collar mentality. I talked about the fact that he was a student of pass rush, like he's all in, he's obsessed. Like, those are good lessons to take from that position. George Kittle, we've talked about the tight end position, has been a traits position. If you look at traits have been a good framework to go. Get some height, weight, speed guys, and then roll with them. And we're not going to talk about him here, but I mean, like Kelsey was a former quarterback. He's going to go down arguably as the greatest tight end of all time. Antonio Gates didn't play football in college. Like, these guys have traits. They have traits and they have feel, and then you can develop the rest.
It's such a position where we can say that it's made. It is a made position where you've had a great coach and you have a great system, and you're willing to be patient with a young player who has those traits. You can make a high level tight end. It is different than some of the other positions where you got to come fully equipped and ready. This is a position where you can really develop one. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like a chia pet. Like, you can just pour a little water on it and out comes an all-pro tight end. You don't get that. You don't get that often.
Laquan Treadwell was a name people asked about. Was a bust as a wide receiver. He was 6'2", 221. So let's find the reason. Looking through the notes, he's smooth. He can high point the ball. He's got some power. He can make you miss. No separation. There you go.
No separation. And for me, I know I was influenced by the fact that I was around him when he was in high school. He was like the top wide receiver in high school, and he was kind of a man amongst boys during that time. But what maybe I didn't factor into the evaluation was, hey man, they're bigger, faster, stronger at the next level. And if you don't have, like as a big receiver, if you don't have either superior physicality and strength to maybe make up for the lack of speed and separation quickness, it's going to be hard to get open in the league. Now, to be fair, he certainly didn't play up and live up to the expectations that he entered the league with. But I told him, I saw him at a game last year, and I told him how proud I was of him for being a first-round pick who had bounced around, who had been on practice squads, who've carved out like 8 years in the league in some capacity. That's hard to do because DJ, he didn't have the superior gifts that I thought he would have when he entered the league as a first-rounder.
Yeah, no, again, credit to him for hanging on and making a career of it. A couple of the names I'll roll through here. I'll give you 2 quarterbacks, and you can pick which one you want to go on. Jalen Hurts, we've talked about a bunch. Gun zone reads. He's quick as a runner in the run game. He's got zip. He's got touch. Question some of the vision and anticipation. His feet could be a little bit late following his eyes. Dak Prescott question mark was what I had written on him. And then the next one was somebody wanted to know about Sam Darnold's report. I thought it needed to keep his offhand on the ball, had some fumble issues upright in the pocket. He can process quickly. He does bail a little bit early and he had terrible pass protection in college. So my comp for him was Tony Romo. But it hurts. And Sam Darnold, I'm still not giving up on that one. I think he's got a chance to have a good year here with the Minnesota Vikings. But with Hurts and Sam Darnold, Buck, what did you take away?
Okay, so let's talk about Jalen Hurts first. I had the conversation. I had an opportunity to watch Jalen Hurts work out prior to his senior year when he was in the Star. It was him and Sam Ellinger. And I remember watching him work out at the Star because he's part of Elite 11. I'm like, man, you know what? This spends it a lot better than I thought. You better keep an eye on him. And I remember at that time later talking to Will McClay and saying, man, Jalen Hurts just reminds me so much of what Dak Prescott was at Mississippi State. And DJ, you fast forward a few years into the league, he kind of has become what Dak Prescott has become for the Dallas Cowboys in those similar stages. He is a guy who has gotten better. And what I learned from him, character really matters when it comes to the quarterback position. Football character, winning intangibles, traits, knowing how to win, being impact and influenced by great coaching and taking that and kind of being the messenger for the coach to the team. That matters. Sam Darnold, I remember the conversation was Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. And I think we talked about it where I had projected wrongly. I said, Josh Rosen is the shooter. Sam Darnold is more the scorer. That it may not look pretty from a technique, textbook standpoint, but he finds a way to get to the winner's circle. We talked about in basketball terms, he's the one guy on the pickup squad that you put him with anybody, he just kind of figures it out. And that's how he played at SC. And I will say this, unfortunately for him, I don't know if he's ever been in like a great situation as a pro. And I know people say we make excuses for Sam Darnold. Why are we light on Sam Darnold compared to other guys? I just don't know if he's ever been in a great situation, whether it's the Jets, Carolina.
He was a backup with San Francisco.
Yeah, like you would like to see him surrounded by playmakers that would allow him to showcase his talent. We'll get a chance to see that in Minnesota, so then we'll be able to make a true thing. But that's kind of, I always felt like he was a shooter. I feel like his results overshadow the process. Yeah. And in this league, process matters in terms of how you go about it because the process allows you to have consistent results. He has always been more results than process. So hopefully that works around with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I don't know that there is a takeaway from Sam Darnold yet. I think after this year, we'll be able to have the clues to help answer that question. I think this is that evaluation year. But there you go, Buck. There's some of those reports here. Had some others. Again, we'll continue to do that over time here on the pod, where we'll jump in and give you some thoughts on what those guys, what was being discussed about those guys back in the day. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Anything else you want to get into before we jump out of here, Buck?
No, I mean, I think these kinds of things are fun. I think it's fun to look back at reports and to discuss what we learned from each of those evaluations. One of the things about being a scout is, it's a growth mindset that you must have going into it because the game continues to evolve. Our evaluations and the way that we go about evaluating players has to evolve. And then the thing about the league leaders, I think you kind of turned me onto that. There are two things that we do: looking at league leaders and then watching the guys that I know people don't like the Pro Bowl and those things, but the guys who are Pro Bowlers and all pros. When you go back and study what plays in this league and what plays really well, there's something that you can learn from that. And so having a discussion where we're projecting all of these guys, I think Brock Purdy is a perfect example. 7th-round pick, one of the league leaders in passer rating. To be able to look at where he's developed and how far he's come speaks a lot about just how crazy the league can be when it comes to evaluating players, particularly that quarterback position.
So I know there's a lot of teams and their personnel departments at training camp where they'll have kind of these scout schools, right? Where you get all the scouts together and you try and, do something to help the group become better at what you do. And I know there's a lot of personnel directors at the college level that listen to the pod. I would encourage everybody. I think that's a great exercise, whether you're at the college level and you've missed on a high school kid that's gone on to be a great player. Maybe you didn't offer him and he goes somewhere else and turns out great. I think it's worth it to do these little projects where you cobble together these lists of players that maybe you didn't see it, and then they ended up being great, and then pull the lesson out. Every player has a story. Every player, every evaluation has a lesson, and what you got right, what you got wrong. But I think that's good. I think that's helpful to bring those up and to see if you can learn, hey, what was the takeaway? What can we learn from each of these stories? And just going through those players we just went through, Buck. I mean, there's little clues, there's little breadcrumbs there. You can take something from it.
Always, like DJ, that's part of it. It's always learning. It's always looking to see how can I do it better than I've done it before, and what really plays in this league. And I think what you find as an evaluator, you're more likely to be a little more forgiving if you start digging into this stuff, because we have this ideal of what plays in the league. But when you actually see what plays and plays really well in the league, they're flawed players that find a way to get it done. And if you can understand what the flaws are and which flaws are not, I would say, like preventative from being able to be successful.
Fatal.
I think sometimes you can find a way to uncover a player, a hidden gem.
Yep, there you go. Well, hope you guys have enjoyed that one. It's a fun topic. We'll have one more episode this week as we march closer towards the NFL season. Looking forward to it. Hope you guys will join us right here on Move the Sticks.